So our new record, Holy Ghost, is out today! We've been waiting a while. We're going to play some songs from it.
I really wasn't expecting Holy Ghost to be Modern Baseball's final album, but at the same time, I couldn't be happier that this is the album they went out with. That an album as incredible as Holy Ghost will be their legacy. This is without a doubt Modern Baseball at their very best. And I can't help but wonder what the perception of Modern Baseball would be at this point in time if they never stopped and kept on going as hard as they were. I feel like this album was the turning point for them in their career, where music journalists and music critics were starting to take them really seriously as a band. To this day, I'm still shocked that there's a needle drop review of a Modern Baseball album, and even crazier, Anthony gave it a 7 out of 10, which is absurd, considering his influence in the music world coupled with his general distaste for the newer crop of emo bands. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but there is a 20-minute documentary surrounding the creation of this album and all of the events that led up to it. And I don't want to waste your time just rehashing stuff from the documentary, so this vid will primarily be discussing the content within the album. And as always, I'll inject a personal story or two for flavor and hopefully some relatability. If you haven't watched Tripping in the Dark yet, make sure to go do that. It'll make you cry, but in a really good way. First and foremost, I never realized how significant the album artwork was for this record until I started researching this video. So the album is called Holy Ghost, of course, and right behind Bren and Jake is a bookstore called Siegel Book, a religious bookstore mainly found in Utah and southern Idaho, and sells books that focus on the teachings and doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. And even though the album art may appear arbitrary at first glance, it is anything but. On top of the religious bookstore in the background, we see both Bren and Jake hiding their faces in reference to Jake's song Hiding and in reference to Bren's fantastic closer, Just Another Face. And this is admittedly overanalyzing on my part, but I also like how the album name is High Up in the Sky, because, you know, heaven is up in the sky and down below is a fiery abyss of despair. Holy Ghost was intentionally split up into two parts. The first side being songs by Jake Ewald, and the remaining side would contain tracks sung by Brendan Lukens. They both explicitly state that this format was modeled after Outkast's 2003 double album, Speaker Box: The Love Below. While this album is definitely Modern Baseball's most mature effort to date, I'd also argue that it's their saddest album to date. While Sports and You're Gonna Miss It All had melancholy moments, Holy Ghost just has this undeniable dark vibe to it, a heaviness. In the past, Modern Baseball expressed sadness over something like breaking up with a girl, but it's very different this time around. Now we see them tackle topics like having a family member that was holding your entire family together pass away, being burnt out on touring, something that was supposed to be a source of complete and utter joy, and Brendan even addresses his mental health, something that I've always viewed as extremely admirable. In a Pitchfork review, contributor Ian Cohen writes, "Modern Baseball's Holy Ghost asks for difficult things out of its audience. Space, patience, and acceptance, but demonstrates them as a band with an undeniable sonic ambition and social conscience." He really hit the nail on the head with the last part regarding sonic ambition and social conscience. One of the many reasons that I respect Modern Baseball so much is that they never romanticized the whole emo, sad boy thing. They wrote sad music, but they never felt the need to reduce themselves to selling shirts that said things like Modern Baseball, Philly Sad Boys since 2012, or something like that. If anything, they worked hard to rid the scene of that type of thing. They were smart beyond their years and were able to clearly see that promoting sadness as an aesthetic to a young, impressionable group of fans was a less than responsible thing to do. As a band, they show us that it's okay to be sad and feel things, but more often than not, they leave us with a positive message to show us that those times aren't forever. Like on the last track of Sports, Jake reminds us that even though it's been one heck of a challenging year, he's alright and he's always getting better. And even on the end of Holy Ghost, Bren reminds us that he'll be with us the whole way and that we can do it. The album opens with title track Holy Ghost, a short, haunting, thought-provoking ballad sung by Jake. Even though this is the shortest song on the album, clocking in at 1 minute and 1 second, to this day it remains one of my favorites on the album. It just hits for some reason. As listeners, we can only assume that this is Jake talking about his grandfather, and he actually confirms this in Tripping in the Dark, where he says,
"I think Holy Ghost was the first song I wrote, and it was kind of about my grandfather, and it came out so fast.
He's been haunting my dreams at night. I've been bleeding from tripping in the dark, trying to turn on the light." These are the first lines we hear as we click play on the album. Jake is of course referencing his grandpa, but I like how it's left ambiguous so anyone can find their own meaning in it. And when he mentions tripping in the dark and trying to turn on the light, it sounds like he's trying to find his footing in life and attempting to obtain information so he can do so, but is failing. Hence the bleeding from tripping line. And finally we hear Jake sing, "I've been hollering at him in the dark, trying to find the right switch. Yeah, Yeah, my third wish has always been 3 more. But this time, my Holy Ghost is hovering over me and I am passed out on the floor. Jake is now asking this being for help in life, yelling into the dark for answers on what to do. The most interesting part of this track for me has always been the part where Jake tells us that this time, his Holy Ghost is hovering over him, which suggests that maybe he doesn't have to just wish for life guidance anymore. Maybe this time he can find a permanent guide. This Holy Ghost that's constantly watching over him, the ghost being his deceased grandfather. The transition from Holy Ghost to Wedding Singer is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. It's so seamless and the songs contrast one another so well. While Holy Ghost was quiet and thoughtful, Wedding Singer is an upbeat, catchy banger that'll get stuck in your head for days. It's one of those songs where you listen to it and immediately have to hit the replay button as soon as it's over. Wedding Singer is further evidence that modern baseball doesn't romanticize sadness but wants to defeat it. In the self-aware one-liner, "This year we're gonna stamp out the sorry feeling." And even though the line before it states, "Find it hard to believe tonight," I still see it as a positive sentiment, basically wanting to strive for positivity and happiness, but not for sure that it will turn out that way. Modern baseball continues their references to technology in verse 2 of Wedding Singer. "Locked your love in a screenshot, they all work that way, and I've been wishing I could say that I don't." I view this as Jake's critique on how the current generation approaches romance. Instead of going out and doing something in real life, such as going to the movies and snapping a picture of you and your love, people just sit at home and text each other loving messages and save them to their camera roll to reminisce upon later. Jake wants to be above this, but is honest enough with himself to know that he's no better than the rest of us. Following Wedding Singer, we're gifted with an introspective Jake song titled Note to Self. In an interview with WXPN's The Key, Jake explains that even though this track was extremely hard to write for him, he felt like he had to finish it, because the idea it surrounds was something he'd been thinking about for a really long time. The idea being that fans of their band had really started to take their personal thoughts and opinions to heart, and that they were letting them down by not having anything important to talk about. This is exemplified in the line, "Your hands are out and I see. You're asking me for a vowel, but I am weak and I am stubborn, so I'll say this is all I have right now." In Note to Self, Jake also discusses the monotony of the touring lifestyle with words like, "When every second of sun's the same, what's the point of staying awake?" This line perfectly sums up the new type of sadness that modern baseball convey on this album. It's not as direct and in your face, but when you strip it down, we see that Jake is asking himself, is any of this even worth it anymore? In the beginning, touring was the coolest thing ever for modern baseball, a dream come true, to put it lightly. So to hear this dispirited line from Jake is sad, a deeper, heavier type of sadness. And then we hear Jake break the fourth wall and actually reference the band in a very direct way by saying, "The glare from our stupid, spineless words just whining every day. What do I really want to say?" These lines are what I believe to be one of the root causes of the mental health issues that the members of modern baseball began to face. It sounds like Jake is trying to tell us that in the process of writing these songs to aid others in life, he and other members of modern baseball suffered in silence. They were successfully able to help others, but in the process forgot to help themselves. I believe this was absolutely unintentional on their end and weren't able to process the weight of all of it until it was too late. Track 4 is called Mass, and according to Jake, this song is about how much he hates upstate New York, which gives us a lot more context to the line, "Bury me beneath New York State, it's the only place where I feel dead." But this song is also, once again, about being burnt out on touring, and the primary reason for Jake, at least in this song, is because he misses his girlfriend, Jessica Flynn. And the only reason I mention her by name is because she played an important role in the band, taking many of their promotional photos, including the Holy Ghost album cover, and still does stuff for Jake's band Slaughter Beach Dog. In Mass, he's not shy in the least about missing his girlfriend. And while his writing tends to lean on the ambiguous side, leaving lots of room for imagination, in these lines we can understand exactly what Jake is talking about. And for the most part, I think we can take these words at face value, as they sound very confessional and personal in tone. Days like this, I miss listening to records, making coffee together, snow globes, and jersey sheets. I tried sleeping in our bed without you last night, but that didn't work at all because I couldn't sleep. I can only imagine what it's like to leave your loved ones for months at a time, to go to places that you've never been to play music for strangers. And don't get me wrong, that sounds amazing, but from the outside looking in, I can only imagine that the magic of it all wears off rather quick, leaving you on the road, homesick, longing for your family and significant other. When Holy Ghost was announced, 3 things were dropped: a documentary and 2 singles, 1 Jake song, 1 Brendan song. And listening to these 2 tracks for the first time gave me an uneasy feeling. I wasn't sure if I liked them, or even connected with them. But years later, they've become some of my favorite modern baseball songs to date. Jake's song was called Every Day, and Brendan's song was called Apple Cider I Don't Mind, which we'll take a look at when we get to Brendan's side of the album. But in Jake's song Every Day, he talks about memories that he coins as insignificant to him, and this song is an attempt at understanding their importance importance in his life. He also reveals that every day revolves around the idea of using honesty as a tool for nurturing your relationships, whether they be romantic or platonic. In the WXPN interview, he goes on to explain that while talking about being honest with one another is nice, actually putting it into practice in everyday life is hard and can be emotionally taxing, but notes that even though it's tough, it's usually worth it. The most interesting lyric on Every Day would have to be the concluding lines that tie the song together. Every day is all about doing things that you don't want to do, but your reward is you get to wake up. Reading this for the first time, it sounds like Jake may be referring to the monotony of everyday life. And while I do think that is a component of what he's talking about, I think his core message here is that even though many of us wake up each day and have to go to a job that we hate or do some boring chores, the fact that we're alive and that we're able to do that is a blessing and a gift in and of itself. To conclude Jake's half of the album, we get an ambitious, emotionally dense song called Hiding. Jake says that he wrote most of this song the day after his 22nd birthday, meant to pick up where Cole's left off. In Cole's, he had just started college and was excited for the future, but on Hiding, he's now done with college and unexcited about the future. He reveals that through all of the time spent touring and being away, he felt like he had abandoned his family and was terribly disillusioned with his social life. In terms of pure songwriting, this is one of the best things Jake has ever created. The way it gradually builds tension before exploding into the final lines of the track is amazing to experience for the first time, and only gets better with each re-listen. Entertain the cancer, we'll answer upwards either way. These words always intrigued me because entertaining the cancer most likely alludes to acknowledging the declining health and deterioration of Jake's grandfather, but answering upwards is the part that always leaves me thinking. I'm unable to tell if Jake is saying this in a way to convey that this is what he believes, or if this line is more so presented from the point of view of his family members, expressing how they think and process the cancer diagnosis. Because most people know that Jake was brought up in a religious background, so this part makes me wonder where he's at with his faith, when he wrote this song as well as in present day. As we round off Jake's half of the album, we're greeted with the short and sweet "Coding These to Lukens." Even though Jake is on this song, I've always considered this a Bren song, and the start to his half of the album, essentially Jake passing the torch to Bren to carry us out. This is the first taste we get of Brendan addressing his mental health struggles openly and head on, and I didn't realize how dark his words were on this song until I took a closer look and finally realized that after all these years he's saying fiending and not leaving, which adds an entirely new meaning for me. The lyrics are kinda hard to miss because number one, this song is so short and Bren says them so fast, and it's easy to get distracted by the crashing instruments in the background, which really complements the erratic nature of this song. But the words in question are, spit fire, spit blood, spit fast, I'm heated, I'm sure this won't linger longer than it has to, get out of my way steadfast, I'm fiending, I'm a certain kind of way tonight. I always thought that he said leaving instead of fiending, and I'm sure most people know what that means, but it is kind of informal, so basically it means someone who is addicted to a pernicious habit, something that's harmful and ruining them. For Bren, it could be a substance. For someone else, it could be an addiction to inappropriate movies that's taking control of their life. And I believe the lines preceding these are Bren describing a manic depressive bipolar moment revealed by him stating, I'm sure this won't linger longer than it has to, likely alluding to a mood change or an unexpected change in behavior or thought process. Continuing the theme of being burnt out on touring and missing home, we have Bren's second track on Holy Ghost, Breathing in Stereo. What I like so much about Bren's side of the album is that you can almost feel the struggle he's going through on these tracks. Tracks like Coding These to Lukens, Breathing in Stereo, and What If have this shaky, uneasy feeling to them, accompanied by lyrics that match those tones. It really makes me wonder how Bren would have grown and blossomed as a musician if he had continued, developed, and progressed the sound that he had on Holy Ghost. These songs, as well as all of his tracks on The Perfect Cast, leave me thinking that this man hadn't even tapped into 1% of his ability and talent. The line on Breathing in Stereo that has really stuck with me over the years is planning our future without you, without me at times. We're revealed the harsh reality of the touring lifestyle. And that truth is, it's really hard to have a normal life and do what they do. This goes for any band that tours. You go away for months and you change. Well, everything back home changes. And when you get back home, you're just supposed to fill in the gaps of missing time and act like you were never gone. Something like this could wear down even the strongest of people. Apple Cider I Don't Mind was the first of the two singles Modern Baseball released from Holy Ghost. Looking at the album as a whole, it makes a ton of sense that this song was chosen as the single. It gives us the perfect taste of what we're going to experience without giving too much away. In promotion of the album, Bren did an interview with NPR and explained Apple like this: trust is something every growing relationship needs. Without trust, all your conversations are just questions and doubts. I lost my best friend and my partner, and I didn't know who to blame. Apple is a toast to looking at my past mistakes as a chance to move forward. This song contains one of my favorite Brendan verses in the entirety of the Mobo catalog. Did You Ever Love Me? Biopsy from the Origin of Sound confirms you're speaking truthfully. I'm not gonna lie, when I heard this the first time, I had to sit down and try to process what he's trying to say here. My conclusion is that she definitely did love him, that much is clear, but also that Bren had been vexed by this question from the very beginning. People always say that the beginning of a relationship is the honeymoon phase when things are all good, and Bren even wondered if she loved him during this point in their relationship. And the way that Bren ends this track is very clever. Everything builds up as he's yelling, "You tell me this is forever, you tell me this is forever," and right before he can finish the last forever, it cuts off abruptly before he can finish. So it wasn't forever. After Apple Cider, we're met with even more energy on What If, the second to last track on the record. We see Bren doing a lot of self-reflecting here, wanting to correct his old ways and become a new, better person, but doesn't feel like he's able to. Bren tells us that in his childhood, he only wanted to do good and nice things for people to recognize him as a good person. When I was younger, I thought of caring as a reason for some to praise me and envy. But I think the best part is when he says, "It's not about me this time," only to immediately correct himself with, "There I go lying again." I love how open and honest he is here, bravely acknowledging his shortcomings. And now we've arrived at Just Another Face, Brendan's magnum opus, the cherry on top of this fantastic collection of songs, the closer to modern baseball's Swan song. This song is everything you could possibly want and more out of the final song on their final album. I love how Bren doesn't really talk in metaphors or word things in a cryptic manner. He doesn't have to. That's not the point of this song. The lyrics are clear, confessional, and give listeners a glimpse of hope and inspiration to take away with them after they finish the album. Since I love this song so much, we're going to look at a good portion of the lyrics here. "I'm a waste of time and space, meandering on wanted days. I don't know how I got here. Entering a well-known phase. I scream, get lost. I hate everything. I can't say how I got here." Between verse 1 and 2, there are 4 chunks of lyrical content. And at the end of each one, Bren repeats, "I don't know how I got here" / "I can't say how I got here." When you face mental health problems, at least in my case, it's kind of hard to remember what life was like before. And you also wonder how it got so bad in the first place. In following these lines, we have what would be considered the pre-chorus, and these 2 simple lines have always touched me on a very personal level. "Still, I can feel the need to change from the inside, but I can't let anyone know just yet." You can't force change, in general, but especially regarding mental illness. When I was going through some really depressing lows in my life, I knew that something had to change, that I had to begin taking steps to improve, but I couldn't. At least not at that very moment. When you're depressed, whether it be chemical, situational, or both, you ironically want to avoid anything that will help you, like the plague. That's how it was for me, at least. Counseling repulsed me, giving medication a try was not gonna happen, and I just wanted to be left alone in my hopeless, numb world. Eventually, I did come around and began taking corrective action, but it wasn't something that I forced. It just kinda happened. If it's all the same, it's time to confront this face to face. I'll be with you the whole way. It'll take time, that's fact. I'm not just another face, I'm not just another name. Even if you can't see it now, we're proud of what's to come. And you. I love everything about this. It's catchy, it's got a good flow, and I love what Bren is saying here. He's able to capture the perfect balance of positivity and honesty, all while staying grounded in reality. You can fight this, you can do it, and you can win. But he also knows that it will take hard work and a lot of time to reach that point. The "I'm not just another face" excerpt reminds me of a person in your life that's there to help you, like really help you, and actually cares. The person that encourages you to keep pushing toward a better mental future even when things get extremely dark. They're the person that will pick up their phone at 2 a.m. and listen to what's going on. Sometimes it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're faced with mental health problems, it might as well be impossible. And sometimes someone has to do it for you. Because even if you can't see it now, they are proud of what's to come. And you. Modern baseball impacted my life in a very big way, but most importantly, they've impacted the lives of thousands of others. Not only was their music outstanding, but they were and are great role models. They were always so grateful, appreciative, kind, accepting, didn't take things for granted, and not once did I see them act entitled. Great musicians, great people. Even though they're no longer together or making music, their spirit is alive and well, and we're going to keep it that way. Forever. Before you go, I do have a quick announcement. While this is the end of the trilogy, I will be making more modern baseball videos. One about the perfect cast, one about Jake's band Slaughter Beach Dog, and I'm going to try my hand at making a Mobo Best Moments highlight reel. I'm going to space these videos out a bit so I can talk about other things on the channel, but be on the lookout. they're coming. Thank you so much for watching / supporting these modern baseball videos. This is by far the most fun I've had making videos thus far in my YouTube career, and I just want to let all of you know how much I appreciate the support. It never goes unnoticed. Have a nice day.